Hi, this is Adam Block from Adam Block Studios, and I have a section today I'd like to show you which really illustrates the way that I think, the way that I solve problems, and the way that I teach to try to figure out answers to particular issues that people have. So people send me questions all the time, and of course I do my best to answer them. One of the benefits that I get out of getting all those questions is I see a lot of patterns and similarities, and I just see all the various permutations and examples and stuff. And that obviously helps me to be able to quickly figure out what's going on. Sometimes I see a question that I don't immediately know the answer to, but it seems like it should be something that's easy to figure out. And that's what I'd like to show you now. This question comes from Facebook, so I took on the challenge. The person didn't ask me directly, but I just thought that something didn't make sense about the question, and I thought I knew the answer, but it didn't match with the information that was given. So I asked if I could assist in trying to figure it out. So here it is. This particular individual, he did the following. He combined information for this object, for NGC 7023, and he found that scattered around a picture, he would find these little artifacts. But he didn't see them directly in the original subframes. He only saw it in the integrated images. So he said after stacking, there's some weird black artifacts present in the stacked picture, but after examining the original frames, there's nothing there. So I need to stop. Of course there's something there. There has to be something there. Things don't magically come about. So that already didn't make sense to me. So that was red flag number one. I said, no, that's not right. And then it continues that the calibrated frames as well as the frames that were treated with cosmetic correction after calibration, no problems, he says. Star alignment, however, seems to be the problem because from the picture below, he shows the single frame and, it must have been something about star alignment. Again, another red flag. Didn't seem to make sense to me that star alignment would do anything of that sort. In fact, I'm not even sure a good mechanism as to how that would happen. But he went on to prove his point. And by the way, what this gentleman's doing is absolutely the right thing to do, and I wish that more people would really do it. What you want to do is you want to prove that the assertions that you're making about a problem that you might be having, you can show as much as possible of all the reasons why it can't be this, that, or the other. And then people can help because you have already tried to eliminate certain things, and even if those things you didn't perhaps nail down as to really eliminating what the problem is, by going through that exercise, it offers a lot more information. It is better than, for example, when you have a problem, you say, here's a stacked image, I have weird black things. What happened? Well, that is more difficult to try to assess, but if you show, well, here's a combined image, here's the original subframe images, here are the settings that I used. So if you show all of that or prove what it cannot be, then that is a great way to present a particular question. So he provided more information here, which is, again, really nice. He produced a combined integrated result in another program. Furthermore, he says that when he brought these data into PixInsight, when he worked on this other program, he said that the result was also, it didn't have a problem. So it only had the problem when using PixInsight, and he associated that with the star alignment. But again, that was red flag number 2 for me. So now let's actually look at the data and kind of figure out what the problem is and then, what can be done to fix it. So I guessed that the problem had nothing to do with star alignment, that there is something in the data, and that it has to do about pixel rejection. That is what this is all about. So I asked him for some subset of frames. He had hundreds of frames, so he sent 15 frames that we can examine here. So let's look at one of these frames. Here is what one of them looks like. It's a wonderful picture of the Iris Nebula. Beautiful, beautiful image. And because he asserted that, potentially star alignment in some way was a problem, I suggested, well, just give me the calibrated frames, not aligned. So we should go through the process here of creating an aligned set of images, and then we can blink them and potentially see what is going on. So we'll use star alignment here, and we'll keep this as simple as possible. So let's go to those files. Now this is not the, I have another place that I'm working on these data right now. That's here, PixInsight, office hours, and then we have rejection parameters. There they are. So here are the files. I'm going to pick a reference just to be the first one. It doesn't really matter, just the first one is fine. They all looked fine when I looked at them before. And we'll align with that. We'll make the output directory back to that place again. So that's here, 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 office hours, rejection, here. Here we go. That should do it. I'll keep everything the default. We don't need the drizzle data. Just go ahead and do it. And we'll do it really quickly. Let's see what happens. So it had no problem aligning the images. That means we should be able to check them out in Blink really quickly. Be sure that everything makes sense. Here we go. We want to blink the registered ones, which are now here. I'll display them in the same way. And I did pay attention based on his picture as to where exactly he was looking. And he was looking at a little grouping of stars right here. This is where he was looking. And so the artifact was somehow showing up, that little black, whatever that was showing up right here. So let's blink. And you know, I do see some black things running around there. And that's kind of interesting. There is actually something there. So what I'd like to do is now look at one of the, before the frame was registered. Let's look there. And we'll now go and examine assertion number 1, which was that there was nothing there at all. And I'm going to say there has to be something in this area, certainly. What I did is I noticed that, you know, there are pixels that have various values, but there could be one here that is 0. You see, 0 is a funny thing. If you're getting zeros in your data, it means that there is an over-subtraction usually of some sort. Now, you may have seen other videos where, and that's just one pixel I found, right? But I knew there was something there. It's not obvious, but it's there. I've shown another video where you have narrowband images and you have to use a pedestal to take care of zeros. That's not what's going on here, not at all. This is regular broadband imaging, and he has a single pixel, one pixel, that's a 0. Although, as you'll see in a moment, I'm going to show that there are more zeros in this picture, and I'll explain why that is. That's a separate thing, because there's something that can be done with data like this to avoid some of this situation right from the beginning. You don't have to worry about how to compensate for the fact that there is some little pixel here that's a 0. Okay, so we now know that there is something there. There's a pixel that has a 0, and because of the dithering, it gets moved around, and then for some reason does not get rejected when things are combined. So let's close this one. This is my blink screen, and I can see what's going on there, so I don't need this anymore. And let's just get out image integration and integrate the thing. Now, what was not provided in the information was exactly the thing that concerned me. I wanted to know about the rejection, right? But that wasn't part of the information that was provided. He was going down another path here. So I needed to try to reproduce his results, and I did connect with him to talk it over. And he eventually did explain what he was doing. So let's look at what happens here. So we're going to use the default settings, basically, are additive with scaling here. And then we're going to choose the rejection method that he very likely employed because he had a whole lot of images. And the logic is when you have hundreds of images, and if you've watched my tutorials, you'll know that the default pick is GESD, this one, which is a wonderful rejection algorithm. But you know, everything comes with a caveat. You have to kind of understand what the parameters are doing, especially if you have an issue. So let's see what happens if I use this. Now, I don't have 100-something frames. I only have 15, but we'll still be able to see the basic behavior here. So with this, and I will just use the default settings here for just as you find them, for this particular rejection method. Press the button, get the answer. I'm not going to worry about the rejection thing. I just want to show you the actual image here. So here's the image. We will zoom into that region there. We know that there is a problem. And lo and behold, we have reproduced his answer. We've reproduced his image. You can see that there is an issue right here. Now, if you recall, he said that he used another program to produce another integrated image, and he didn't have a problem at all. So, there's always this concern that somehow one software program is doing something very different than another software program. But you always need to remember, if it's possible, to compare two equivalent things. And this other program was not using GESD at all. It was using, and I think he suggested that he'd used the Windsorized sigma clipping. This other program actually has that as one of the rejection algorithms. So we should, of course, try to do the same. Now, there is an assumption that the algorithm that is labeled Windsorized sigma clipping in one program should be the same as it is in another program. But you know what? When you use the operation of add or subtract, we'll do add. 2 plus 2 is 4. It really shouldn't matter which software program you're using. You should get the same answer. So that should apply in many algorithmic cases. Now, there's some details about how the algorithm is used, or some particular assumptions or settings, boundary conditions that are applied, where it does make a difference or matter. But let's assume for the moment that they are the same. We should expect something like the same result. Let's give it a go. So if we choose instead Windsorized sigma clipping, again, I'm just going to choose the default. Although I would normally not do the default, but let's just see what the default gives us if we just do it. The default settings are, I should show you the sigma settings here. They are, for the low, it's like 4 sigma, and for the high, I think it's 3 sigma or something like that. So these are the default settings, and once again, we'll look with the defaults. Zoom. Well, actually, I should do the PixInsight method here. If we want to match these two images, I just take this image here, drag that over to there, and now they're matched. And now we can blink the two images by using page down, and you'll see that indeed we get rejection. Now, in his image up above, where it is more even fully rejected, it's mostly because he has many, many more frames that he used to create that, whereas I'm only working with the 15, some subset here. But indeed, we reproduce the same answer when using Windsorized sigma clipping. Okay, so now we know a couple of things. We know it has nothing to do with registration, and we know that there is something there. So the question now remains, what is it about GESD where we don't get the result that we're looking for, and yet we do when we use the Windsorized sigma clipping? Well, it has to do with one of the parameters in GESD. There's something very special about this rejection algorithm. Let me just go ahead and turn it on here, which is that it does not work on a threshold, sigma threshold, like all the other ones do. Instead, it works on a likelihood of a metric. It's a likelihood metric that this algorithm has to determine whether a value is an outlier or not. It kind of tests the case. Well, the interesting thing is that if you have, again, it's not based on a threshold. So if you have a value like 0, and I mean 0, not 0.1007, not 0.00625 as opposed to 0.00624, but you have an identical value that appears many times in many images, GESD, based on its likelihood of whether that should be an outlying value or not, might say, you know what, I'm seeing that value an awful lot. That could be something that I don't want to reject. And so it'll keep it. It won't reject it. It won't pass the test of being an outlier. Part of the reason for that being is that there is a control here in GESD. It's this low relaxation that is going to determine how strongly it's going to look at values that are less than the median value of the stack of values for a given pixel. And it'll more strongly, if you decrease the relaxation value here, parameter, it will more strongly reject things that are less than the median, which is what this is. A zero value is certainly less than the median. So the problem is this parameter right here. That's basically the issue. If you lower this, so it is, this is the minimum, I believe, number you can use, it's going to more strongly reject on the bottom end. And then let's look at the answer here. Again, we only have 15 frames, so it won't be as good as having 100 gazillion frames. We go like this. We match. Let's see, which one? Is this the G? This is the, I didn't label any of these, but this is obviously the first GESD result, and this is the second. So let's match these two like this. Let's put one over the other like that. Move this away a little bit. And now let's blink. And we get better rejection. Now I can still see one of the zeros remains. Didn't quite kill that last zero. But that is because of the nature of this likelihood metric method of rejection. And perhaps with many more frames, and more importantly, you can also mess around with these other parameters. I have a video at Atom Block Studios where I explain the meaning of these parameters. So you know which parameter you need to adjust in order to get it to reject more fully here. So this is a different algorithm, and it has different parameters, and it has a different behavior. That's really the lesson that you should take away from this particular example. So I'm going to say that if you want to understand even better the details of how this works, you'll want to join me, become a member of Atom Block Studios, where I explain, and this I hope sets me apart from others that you'll find, that I really do take time to explain in as much detail as I can how many of these algorithms work, and exactly in this case why you would need to adjust the parameters to get a better rejection. So there we are. That's the answer, but it's not yet the full answer, because I want to show you one more part of this, which is we still have this question of why are we getting zeros to begin with? So the interesting thing about that question is, again, on Facebook, I had a very brief conversation with this individual, and I made yet another guess. And this is the whole reason I'm making this video, is I'm showing off a little bit here. I made a guess. I asked him, how old are your darks? Because I would expect this kind of problem if you were using old darks. And he wrote back, oh, you know what, they're kind of recent. They're from December of 2020. I'm like, dude, those are not recent darks. Those are 9 months old. And here's the reason why they're not recent. Because in a CCD camera, most CCD chips, now I don't know about how this works in CMOS, but certainly with normal CCD sensors, although the dark current behavior, that behavior at a particular temperature for electrons to accumulate through time, generally does not change very much at all. The dark current level is going to be stable for very long periods of time, maybe even a year, or it's almost indicative of the nature of the electronics and the especially the substrate, what the sensor is literally made of. But the hot pixel population does change. Now his hot pixels that are characterized in the dark may be different than the light frames that he took 9 months later. And so what you'll get is if you have hot pixels that were in the darks that are no longer in the light frames, which have their own different hot pixels, then you're going to find two things will happen. One is you won't completely subtract hot pixels from your current data with your old darks. And number two, where hot pixels were in the old darks, you'll make over subtraction and potentially get zero values in your new calibrated data frames. So that's exactly what I think is happening here. If we scroll around the image here, you can see that there are hot pixels that remain, and this is even after he employed, I guess, cosmetic correction. There's still significant hot pixels. Now, that's yet another mystery as to why the hot pixel correction didn't correct as well as I would have expected, but here they are. I can see some hot pixel-like things here. But we also have some of those zero values. Now, what's the best way to find those? Like what I showed in another video, the easiest way to do this is we'll just get out pixel math here. Let's get out pixel math. And we can use this expression. So I'll just type it again. It is if target t equals 0 in this frame, then I'm just going to make this frame. It'll be black except where zeros are. So we'll just see the location of zeros. We'll make them 1. Otherwise, make it a 0. That's going to make a black image except for where these hot pixels, or where the over subtraction happened with the hot pixels, where the zeros are. And we go like that. So there they are. Do you see them all? Yeah, kind of hard to see, right? There's a quick trick we can do just to be able to see them a little better. If we get out morphological transformation, we can use the dilation with some big value here, like this, and dilate wherever these things are so we can see them on the screen. Oh, I didn't do that right. Let's see. Hang on. I said I see what I did wrong. I don't know if everyone sees this. I did this on the registered frames. Let's teach us in another thing. On the registered frames, you when you register, the interpolation is going to take those 0 values and make them non-zero because you're going to be mixing them with neighbors, so you won't get exactly 0. I tried to open that file from the image integration. I should have done it from the other place. So these are the original ones right here. Yeah, here's his original calibrated data. Let me just do this again. Here's my pixel math. So you go like that, and then we do morphological transformation like this. And let's see the zeros. There they are. Now look at the number. That number of where those were 0 values in this image, right? That looks like the kind of number of pixels that might change through time. It's not a lot. I mean, literally, there might only be 20 to 30 or whatever zeros in this image. So it's not a lot to worry about. But if you're very careful and you're attentive and you look through the image, and then he had this, so he had kind of 2 issues here. We have this over subtraction, potentially, of hot pixels. And then, of course, we have the parameters for this algorithm, GESD, that just need to be optimized so you can get rid of the problem. But if the problem wasn't there to begin with, I suspect that if he took newer darks and calibrated his data, he would have fewer zeros, and he would have never seen this problem in the first place. So there you have it, the complete story behind everything with this seemingly simple issue. And I thought it was a simple issue when I first saw it, but you can see how you can begin with a problem and kind of dissect it a little to understand the reason why it's happening, and then also even some preventative things that you can do so that you don't have the problem basically to begin with. I hope you enjoyed kind of spending some time with me to see how I think about solving problems. This is what I do when anyone gives me a problem to look at. And I hope you can take away something from this, that you can employ that same kind of logic, the same kind of reasoning to solve your own problems. That's one of the things that I try to showcase in my videos at atomblockstudios.com. Become a member, subscribe down below, just give me some comments down below what you would like to see in the future. Please subscribe to this channel, like the video so that when I produce more videos, you'll know instantly that there's something new that I've got to talk about.